Hello, beloveds. This is Bevan. Welcome to Bevan, a femme over 40 and her friends podcast. I'm your host, Bevan. I've said my name 3 times. It's time to start this show. I got a really great listener question. I love listener questions. They're so helpful for me to know what would serve you for podcast episodes. And this one, I'm just going to summarize it rather than read it because it's more like situational and very specific to the person. But they are a longtime listener of the podcast, and I'm so grateful for them. One of the most engaged people I have who listens to the podcast because I get regular feedback and questions, and that's what I love. So instead of me speaking to a void, I get to hear from a person. So if you have a question for a future episode, please email me, fatkiddanceparty@gmail.com. Or if you're a member of the Patreon page, which I would love if you are a member of the Patreon page, even for free, patreon.com/FKDP, which stands for Fat Kid Dance Party, which is my aerobics class for anyone who feels left behind by mainstream fitness. If you've ever been called too much, too fat, or felt too awkward to dance, mine is the supportive class for you. I have so much available in the Patreon page, workout videos. So if you don't want to come to my Zoom classes, or you can come to the Zoom classes, I teach twice a week, a low tempo class during the week, and then on the weekends, a longer all levels class. It could be low tempo if you just take it a little easier. But I also have spiritual self-care lessons on there and a ton of exclusive podcast episodes just for the Patreon page. Sometimes things are a little too tender for me to share publicly, but that is a great place for me to do it. The free membership is I'll give some freebies for free members, but primarily that stuff is behind the paywall. But it's such a great way to support me. I truly can tie a string from where I'm at today and the art I'm producing today to the support I've received from my Patreon membership. I wish Patreon had existed in high school and I could have just dropped out. Just started my art journey then instead of getting into 6 figures of educational debt. But that's all right. That's a different timeline. And today we are going to talk about timelines. But I am also just super grateful, again, to anyone who supports the podcast in any way. And if you don't want to be a member, again, the free membership is super great because in this age, it's becoming more and more expensive to have email lists. And so a Patreon page for me, as if you're a free member, you get the same updates that I send out to my email list. And it's a great way for me to stay in touch with you. And if you ever decide you want a membership, I'm here. I'm ready to support you. I have a new client who just got into the Patreon, and I loved it because it was like I could help her in so many ways in this way where it wasn't like I've met her at Zoom classes because she showed up to Zoom classes, but then also she went through a bunch of the aerobics classes already before Zoom, so she kind of knew what to expect from the classes because it's not like a regular aerobics class. And I have a ton of stretch classes. I'm doing all winter long. I'm doing grief stretch classes and rage aerobics because grief and rage seem to be the big pivot points emotionally for people. I mean, certainly it is for me. I did rage aerobics myself because I received a message from my guides that I needed to release some rage. And I was like, oh, volcano. Okay. I guess I need to release some rage. And then I did. And I simply did. Like, I didn't even have a 10-minute rage class yet on my membership, but I do now because I saw the hole because I'm also a client. And I did a 10-minute rage just aerobics for myself. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like I broke a glass ceiling in how I feel. My emotions, like I was suddenly more open to delight than I was before. So rage is a valid emotion. It is part of the map of human emotions, and most of us are socialized to stuff our emotions away for other people's comfort, but especially our rage. Like women's anger is not okay. And men are really only taught three emotions: happy, sad, angry. And so and that's not the atlas of emotions that Dr. Brene Brown, a Scorpio, has mapped out for us as over 80 emotions. So there's so many things in there and so many needs that we have that are underneath all of this masking we do because we're not taught how to just be present and hear what's going on. And one of my favorite things that I offer through this movement practice is just the ability to pause and consider what is coming through. What does my inner child need to say to me? It's also an inner child healing. It's a big part of what the work I do. So much is available for you if you want to take aerobics with me. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about what happens when a psychic prediction does not come true. That was like the gist of the question. There's so much more to it. But I want to say, first and foremost, being psychic, as someone who's like really in my psychic mediumship development in a way that I never thought I was going to. Like, I've always kind of like known I had pretty good, I haven't always known I've had good intuition. I would say like probably by my mid 30s, I started to understand, oh, I think my intuition is actually there's more in there that I can't hear because I live in New York City. And I knew leaving New York City would help me clear up the channel so that I could hear better. And I thought that when my second fiance was hassling me, she really manipulated me to move with her to Los Angeles. And when I was like thinking it through, I was like, I think this could really help my psychic development to move someplace where I don't have walls that share with other people's energy. And I had kind of just done enough spiritual development and growth in that time to realize, oh my God, I live in a box surrounded by other people's energy and I don't know what to do. And like I couldn't even go to the gym without passing 100 people, which is just a lot of energy. And now that I live like in the woods, very rurally, I have seen no humans today. Like I'm literally like very deeply in the woods right now. Someone else's Christmas tree. That's my series. Every time I'm like pet sitting during a podcast episode and someone else's Christmas tree is co-starring with me. So that's where we are. But it is so good for me to just be out in land and in forest and only have that energy. It's really woken up a lot in me and made me understand and aware how much information. And these are just other ways of knowing. In white supremacy, Western colonization, we are not taught to value alternate ways of knowing. There is literally only academic knowing and that's it, or like maybe a trade or something you learn by hand by apprenticing. And it used to be that we learned our ways of knowing, like the mystical land-based ways of knowing, from our elders, from our grandparents. A lot of things are passed through lineage. I definitely come from a very tapped in, tuned in lineage on my maternal side, and it's nuts the information that has come through in the last little while I've been like in this study. And it's funny because like it's so some of the work I do is Akashic Records work. The Akashic Records are basically like how to describe it in a swift way. They're basically like a collection of all the lessons that you've ever learned. If you've seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, there's like the alpha person that like knows all the lessons from the highest timelines. And that's like, I think what the records hold, like they hold all the lessons that you've learned through all your lifetimes. But then also like there's a lot more in there to know. And the Akasha or the Akash is like the fifth element. So we have earth, air, fire, water, the material elements that we can see. And then there's the Akash, which is everything else, it's the spiritual realm. In Celtic lineage, it's called the other world. And, like fairies and gnomes and elves and sprites and your dead grandma and like your spirit guides and angels and archangels and all that, right? So that's like kind of the gist of it, but there's so much more. There's even more. Like I can't even scratch the surface of it, but that's kind of the gist, right? So when you're going through, one thing that you can really do in Akashic Records work is look at other lifetimes. And there's one of the things I've learned from my teacher, Leah Garza, highly recommend her Akashic mentorship. I'm in her level 2, which is about relational Akasha. So I'm very excited. I took this class because I was excited about the conflict resolution from a relational Akashic perspective, because there's a lot of community conflict that I witness that never gets resolved. And I think it's because we have these like carceral colonial understandings of like wrongdoing, and I'm putting that in quotes, that don't have resolution in them. It's really just a punishment and exile. And those aren't ways of being in relationship with people. Those are ways of othering people. And I have a big heart for people who have experienced incarceration because I think it's being I don't know. The phrase that's coming to me is a victim of the system. And I don't think people have to be victims, but I certainly think that once you're caught up in the system, currently the carceral system, it really screws you over forever. And so, and it's a form of slave labor. the billionaires buying up all the houses and making housing costs so difficult and then wanting to criminalize homelessness also own the prison industrial complex that owns the prisons that makes money off of the slave wages that the people in prison have to pay. There was a lawyer on TikTok talking about his clients who are in detention centers. It costs them $5 to call home, and that's all they can make in a week because these slave wages are legal in prisons. And so if you just look at who's getting paid, right? Like I think about this too in terms of body liberation work is like when I feel bad about my body, who profits off of that feeling? And there are billion, multi-hundred billion-dollar industries, multi-hundred billion-dollar industries that profit off of those feelings. So you just have to remember that these are all systems of control. And the best and most incredible thing that we have is our free will choice and the free will to choose our perspective. That's not, that's like my intro to talking about psychic stuff. So, anyway, so what if you get something that doesn't come to pass? I want to say, first and foremost, that psychics are always, I can't even say they're always doing the best they can. I think everyone is doing the best they can with the tools and resources that they have at the time. But there are certainly psychics out there who are hanging their shingle and saying they're psychic and who are not uh doing the work that they need to be in the vibration they need to be. There's also so many I'm literally learning mediumship in two different lineages and two different I mean one's not even really a lineage, it's just Leah teaching us, but and she has a lot of resistance to teaching that she's had to work through because she knows so many people who are charlatans, right? So like there is like there's we went through a foundation of ethics in this class about like what are our ethics for readership. And I think like if you're going to a psychic who has strong ethics, you're getting a different experience than if you're going to someone who is just like not clearing their channel. Like there is so much work I have to do, self-care work for me to be available to channel, for me to be available to have a connection to my intuition. And it's not just like self-care work, it's also like am I following their instructions for my life? Like I have a few friends actually where like they had like spirit had told them, quit your job or leave this relationship or whatever command they had gotten, like that they were ignoring, and then their channel dries up and they can't access the information. And in some ways, like, I don't think like spirit is ever out to punish us, but sometimes they're like, I said what I said, and like, and sometimes like it's like your lens gets like, if you don't clean the lens off on your camera, you're not going to be able to see, capture a clear image. And I think that's the same is true with the channel. So it's funny because I think like this year getting into psychic readership, part of why I wanted to get into readership is because I want to continue learning and developing, and I cannot develop without practice readership. So it's not just like me, because I want access to my intuition. She's amazing and has 100% success rate in terms of stuff she told me to do and things when I didn't do it. I was like, I should have done that. And I will say this, there's like a 99.9% because there was a time where she really wanted, I'm calling my intuition she, it's a day, it's a big day. Um, Wanted me to drive through a snowstorm to go to an Imbolc ceremony in February. And I was like, I pulled off into a gas station and I was like, I don't want to drive through this snowstorm. This feels dangerous. I mean, I live on twisty mountain highways, right? And I was like, is there another way to get the energetic output of this circle? And then they were like, yeah, we can do XYZ, right? So then I followed that intuition. But I needed to like take a pause and consider because like going full headlong, I still have free will choice, right? Like I can choose to not do stuff. But anyway, so all that to say, like, um, I think that every single person is the expert about their lives. Most of the time, if somebody asks me for advice, which by the way, as a formerly very bossy person, who had great advice for people, but people weren't asking. I really had to insert the filter. When I started my recovery in Al Anon, which is for family and friends of alcoholics, I really had to insert the filter of, would you like my advice? Instead of giving my advice automatically, right? But whenever someone actually asks me for my advice, I always guide them back to their intuition because your intuition is going to still know better, even than me with like my clear channel. And you're always too close to the trees to see your forest. So like getting the outside perspective, I still go to lots of psychics. And I'm very grateful for that guidance because it kind of feels like a quest because even still, like, even if you get really good, like you don't get the full picture and you don't know exactly what's going to happen because this is where we're going to talk about timeline stuff. So, um, timelines are like the possible outcomes of what's happening. And I will also reference that movie Everything Everywhere All at Once again because like they had to like the daughter in that movie, which by the way, she was so traumatized by her mother's criticism and abuse that she began altering timelines and like became this monster, right? Like I was like I could not relate to that more because like a lot of like my early adulthood strife was because of like the mountain of criticism I had received growing up, which in my family, in the last couple few generations, they really believe criticism was love, and that is not true. People do not receive criticism as love. Criticism is not necessary. Most people know how they're screwing up, and if they need to become aware, the best way to make them aware is to be incredibly gentle. But most people, you don't even need to make them aware. They know how they're screwing up. Or they don't feel safe enough to see it. And until they feel safe enough to see it, that no change will be made and no real awareness will happen. Okay, that's aside. But I like there's all these different timelines of how things can work out and how you might interact with a different person with whom you have a soul contract or a soul interaction, right? So I believe our souls incarnate to learn lessons and that like everything we want is on the other side of the next lesson, right? So it's kind of like the Labyrinth movie. I'm referencing movies all over the place. So the Labyrinth movie 19, I want to say 85, 86, 87. Jim Henson directed, David Bowie starred as the Goblin King. And I think everyone is like Jennifer Connelly in The Labyrinth. We have the Goblin Castle, which is the dream that we want to pursue, and we need to become the person who can steward that dream. And so the journey through the labyrinth is building us into the person that can have that dream. And we don't get to know we don't get to know the way through the labyrinth. We just get to know the next right step. And then we got to learn that lesson, get through it, and then get to the next lesson. I believe our souls, once we run out of lessons, we don't need it. Like Michael Bernard Beckwith talks about opening the Agape Spiritual Center, which is almost 40 years old. And he said like his guides were like, well, if you don't open this center, we don't really have work for you here. And he was like, oh, dang. Okay, let's work on this thing. So right? So we've got these lessons we get to learn. And I think sometimes you get psychic predictions that really hinge on other people learning lessons and other people doing things and getting things. Um, and I think also right now, the timelines are bonkers. Like things feel like they keep folding in on each other and collapsing and doing different things. And I think part of it is the world is bonkers. Like systems are collapsing. People are kind of like running through life thinking they could count on XYZ, I don't know, like health insurance. By the way, health insurance was created in the 70s. Like it used to be nonprofit and it was created for profit in the 70s. And no, anyway, this is not a rant about health insurance because boy, could I spend 10 minutes ranting about health insurance. But anyway, as we realize that the government is not saving us and 300 million other things that people keep realizing. Like folks are bonkers and timelines are like just the energy is shifting and people are not handling it. That's how I'm going to say it. And so I think like there's predictive psychic stuff and then there's also wave showing psychic stuff. That's really more my bag. I am more about here to like show you the way forward. And that's part of my Akashic Record prayer. We write our own prayers as part of the class that we're in. And showing people the way forward, that's really, and it's not me, it's the guides, right? Showing the way forward. But that's really like, it's like what's best for you and what's going to help you have the better outcomes, right? And like, I can see like, with a client, like I can see like, okay, if you do this, this is how it's going to go for you. If you do this, this is likely how it's going to go for you. But again, it's like there's nothing that's set in stone because it also depends on other people and other factors and like whether, you're going to get drawn into your old patterns in ways, right? It takes a lot of chutzpah to choose a different path and support. It requires a lot of support. And That this is something that I work with my therapist, who's technically coaching me, because we're so delved into the spiritual realm, and I'm no longer in a state where he's licensed. So he started as my therapist when we were both in California, and now, um, I'm up in Washington. So he really has helped me so much in the last 6 years, 6.5, 7 years, almost 7 years. Wow. Uh, where I'm like, okay, my spirit is guiding me to do this. Like my intuition is doing this. And yet, like logic is saying this. Like, how am I reconciling this? Because that's really hard work to do. The spiritual path is not an easy path because you're grappling with uncertainty. But I'll tell you this, you're grappling with uncertainty no matter what. And that's what I was realizing is that like I can build my house and then it will fall apart on me. Like it just felt my whole life felt like it fell apart in 2019. And I had worked so hard to create that life. And so and that has happened a couple of times in my life. And I'm like, why am I even trying to be in the driver's seat anymore? If God wanted to, she would. And that's kind of like I've just kind of been, and I remember like right before the quarantine hit, I was pulling cards about illness if I were to go out and get a job, like a day job. That's what I was considering doing at that time. And I just kept pulling illness cards, and I was like, that's so weird. And then like a few weeks later, here and so I would process with my therapist, and he would say, "Well, that seems pretty clear from the tarot because he reads tarot, so he knows." So I'll come to him and I'll say, "I got X, whatever card it was that I kept getting," and then I. And then the quarantine hit, and I was like, "Oh, wow! If I had gone and gotten a job, because I was like looking at our local, the biggest hirer around here, is like the big healthcare companies. 'Cause that's where there's a lot of money in administration." And I was like, oh my God, look at that. So, right. So, like, so that was a prediction that came through that was, correct, but in a way that I couldn't have predicted. Right. So it's interesting how, like, sometimes, like, something seems like it's happening in one way and then it doesn't. And that's all part of it because it's all just coming together. And I think it's like, um, so I wrote to this person who had sent this question in. And I said, this is my favorite technique for this, and I didn't even learn this till a couple years ago, is like to look at likelihoods. And so I asked Spirit, I just visualize a dial. So like I'm like a 180 degree dial, and I'm kind of using hand gestures if you're watching this. So it's like 180 degrees. And I asked them to put on the dial, like, what's the likelihood from 0 to 100? And so I'll get like likelihood. And I like that a lot because it kind of helps me understand like the things at play and like all of that. There's it's interesting too because some of the predictions I get are more about like I see something coming and I don't know exactly when, and they don't know exactly when because again, like they don't experience linear time. They experience likelihood, they experience like they also are dwelling in the possibilities that we can't possibly see. Part of the system of mind control of white supremacy is black and white thinking. This is also a symptom of alcoholic thinking is black and white thinking. So it's like either or. And that either or is meant to keep us safe, like a false idea of staying safe because it's black or it's white. But actually, pretty much everything is gray. So it's like this idea that, like, okay, so like maybe I'm meant to like partner with this person, and I mean like spouse partner, right? So I meant to partner with this person and yet there's like thousands of possible ways that I can get together with this person, right? But if I'm in black or white thinking, I'm like, it's this or it's this, right? So it's kind of like also how dating, this is a huge lesson I learned about dating. So there's a real distinction between dating and lifetime partnerships with people. And dating is like present moment enjoyment. It's like just enjoying that person for who they are. And then like lifetime partnership is making a decision to create a life alongside someone. And like I said that this is a great podcast episode that I recorded at the top of 2024 about like, is true love a scam? And that was also a good listener question from someone who's like a very engaged listener, and I appreciate you. But like that one was a good one too, because like I think true love is just being willing to continue to explore and be curious about this person and their becoming. If you haven't seen Come See Me in the Good Light, the documentary about Andrea Gibson and Meg Valley, It's on Apple TV now, and it is so moving, and it is such a good grapple with like love and mortality, and like what do you do when you get a terminal diagnosis? And like Andrea, who is like this rock star poet, who I never actually met in real life, but we performed at a lot of the same places. We were in community with a lot of the same people. And certainly in the 90s and the aughts, we made out with the same people who made out with the same people who made out with us, if that makes sense, the way queers do. And I'm doing gestures of interweaving. Anyway, it's a beautiful documentary and highly recommend it. And yeah, I just really think that like we're in a time where it's hard to truly predict anything. And also, I wouldn't even like fault having gotten a prediction that didn't seem to quote come true. I would say like perhaps circumstances changed. Jessica Lanyadoo, who's a great astrologer, taught this recently when she was talking about intuition. She's like, when you ask your cards a question, don't ask them like, should I do this? Ask if this is in alignment. Because sometimes when things are in alignment, it's still in alignment for you to make a mistake. Like life is meant to be learned, right? There's lessons to be learned. And sometimes your mistakes are your greatest teachers. And you learn way more from mistakes than you do from success because there's nothing really to examine. Albert Einstein invented 900 something ways to not make a light bulb before he made a light bulb, right? So is that Einstein? Edison? It's Edison. I always screw those two up. Anyway, sorry guys. Um, if they're listening to this podcast in the other world, I'm sorry that I screwed your names up, but Edison came up with. Anyway, the perseverance. I'm just saying there's things to learn from it. Also, his factory like burned down and they didn't have the right insurance because the factory wasn't supposed to burn down because it was concrete or something like that. And apparently his attitude about the burning down was really good. And that was great for him because he then went on to actually invent the light bulb. I'm just saying the perseverance was there, and we love a persevering king. Okay, and part of this episode, I wanted to share a psychic prediction that did not come to pass. My friend Chrissy Tolley, who I adore, who's been on this podcast many times, she does group readings available through her Patreon page, which I don't even know if I'm allowed to mention anymore because she's not enrolling any new members. Um, but she's doing a new thing. But she does these quarterly readings, and I am like the host of the Zooms. So like she basically comes on and she does her channeling work and then I keep track of the people and manage the Zoom room, which is very helpful because when you're like trying to do readings and stuff, it's helpful to stay up here in the spirit realm than have to be down here doing the admin, right? So, Chrissy, part of that gig, I mean, it's one of my favorite gigs because I just love like facilitating that stuff. I love watching psychics do their thing. I love her community. I love all the people that she serves. And I also get to have a reading towards the end usually. So I get these like quarterly readings from one of my very favorite psychics who's like got a pretty high price point now if you want to see Chrissy one-on-one. So it's helpful to have a group readings. And in one of these readings, I was asking about travel. I think this was at the top of 2023. I asked about travel because I was kind of obsessed with like getting to go on the road again. And she said, "Oh, they want to talk about your mom." And I was like, "Oh." And so in front of a group of people, I don't even know who all was there at the moment, but it was like at least a half a dozen people. She's like, "Yeah, they're saying like your mom's like sick, maybe gonna die, probably gonna die, and like I was like, wow. And so they basically the question from my guides was like, where do you want to live? What's home for you? Are you like here only for your mom or are you here for home? And I have resolutely decided this is home. I love it here. This is like great energy for me. I could maybe see myself in Canada across the border. I'm very close to Canada, if need be. But here I am. I love it here. And it's just like my mother. My mom doesn't identify as psychic, but I will tell you that she psychically intuited what my name should be from a book. She just read my name and she knew that was my name. And thank you, that is my name. I also like she also like retired, where is like this is literally like in astrocartography, which is a way of plotting your astrology onto a map. This is a healing vortex for me. It's like the cross between two planetary lines that it like it's exactly here. So this is like me plugging into a battery charger, like where she retired. So I will say my mom rules for many reasons, and like other things, like little things all the time that she does and doesn't realize that she's doing it psychically. I think she probably identifies as intuitive, but I would call her psychic. And especially now that I know like what's coming through our maternal line, like, oh yeah. So my mom passing away, right? Like that's a really jarring thing to hear. For me though, I was like, it really like made me do the emotional work of like, okay, I wasn't anticipating my mom passing away at 71 years young. That's how old she was at the time. But like, okay, am I in integrity with this relationship? Do I feel like I've done the healing work I need to do with my mom while she's alive? Am I showing up as the daughter I want to be? Knowing that I've had to really come into so much healing around being willing to disappoint my mother. Because a lot of us are really held hostage with the fear from the parent that we're afraid to disappoint. This is like a Tony Robbins question. He asked, like, which parent were you afraid to disappoint? I don't do a good Tony Robbins impression, but that's how it sounds. And but that was my mom. I was always afraid to disappoint her. And then getting like really being able to like real time disappoint my mother and stay emotionally stable and safe and my nervous system is calm. It's been such a growth period. And I'm so grateful for that healing. I'm grateful to have moved so close to her because she's an acts of service love language person. So like she didn't really feel loved by me, but she can because I can do acts of service for her now, right? So it's just been so good. And like I never romanticized like, my mom living a long life. You know what I mean? I just knew like I knew that like trying to pre-grieve my father's death did not work. Like it's not like I saved myself from any hardship by thinking about it ahead of time and trying to solve things ahead of time. I kind of like once I was approaching my dad's death, I was like, like because he had been sick for a long time. He had COPD, so he like was constantly like in and out of the hospital with pneumonia and like almost died a lot. And so like in that relationship, it was just so funny because then I've had a couple of good podcast episodes about grieving my dad, like how great my relationship is with him in the spirit form and how grateful I am for him as a spirit and like how he shows up for me and how loved I feel by him and like all of that, right? And the way like he didn't show up for me in the material world as my dad, which sucks. Like he really missed out, honestly. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what I have now. So I know that I can't pre-grieve my mother. But also, like, I check in with my intuition all the time on that. And it still feels like my mom is not long for the world. But what that means for me is that I stay in integrity in that relationship. And when I saw a dress at Goodwill on Black Friday that I was like, oh, this would be perfect for my mother's funeral, I bought it. I'm also a Scorpio moon, so I'm not afraid about death, and I'm not afraid to talk about death, and I'm not afraid to be prepared for death. And my mom, how lovely that my mother is still alive and she can enjoy this great burnt orange. Burnt orange is her favorite color. It's what she wants everyone to wear to her funeral is orange, but quote, not Home Depot orange. Again, we talk about death openly in our family. And I told my mother about this prediction, by the way. Probably 6 or 7 months later, my aunt was dying. And it is not, and a couple of people have brought up, well, maybe Chrissy was picking up on your aunt dying. I will say absolutely not. Because number one, she wasn't. And number two, she was picking up on my mom. And I checked in with my intuition a lot around that prediction. My intuition is like, yeah, like what Chrissy said is true. And it really like flagged it for me. And one time I was thinking about it while I was driving. This was like last year. I was thinking about it while I was driving. I was like, oh, is my mom still like on the chopping block, so to speak? And I don't say that I'm laughing because like if you don't laugh, you'll cry your eyes out, right? And she's alive. Like I talked to her today. Like I'm grateful for this relationship. I don't take it for granted because I know how precious and I know how precious and swift life is no matter what. Like I've lost so many people before the age of 40 that like I don't take anything for granted. I say I love you to everyone as I end conversations because if I mean it, I mean it and I don't hold it back. So I'll say this, like I am in integrity about that, right? But then like the psychic prediction that my mother's going to die is so weird, you know? And like, so one time I was thinking about it last year on a road trip and I was almost home and I was thinking about it and immediately I see on the side of the road, not just a dead deer, but like a deer with its ribs out, like a really carcassy deer. And I was like, whoa. So anyway, that's what the guides are saying. But again, bring on another lesson. That's what life is about. So if my mom surprised, and my mom has surprised them. This is what Chrissy said in a follow-up reading. She's like, yeah, your mom surprised them and like started learning some more lessons and doing some stuff. So you never know, right? Like my mom could live to 100 and this could be totally wrong. And I am not attached to this being a correct uh prediction, right? Like this is just a prediction that hasn't yet come to pass. Um but it's interesting, right? Like how these things like come up and like and how the knowledge that my mother might pass also informs my decision making, you know? It made me feel much more peaceful about not traveling so much in 2023. And I did tell my mom. I didn't intend to tell my mom about the prediction, but I told her when I was worried about her taking a trip. And I was just like, listen, I don't be scared about this, but this is what my psychic said. And she was like, oh. And so and I will say this, like I know for sure, like it's not because my aunt passed away really swiftly in 2023. And I will say I think my aunt knew she was passing because she really was like just the way she was communicating over that winter before she passed. She passed in September. And so but aunt energy and mom energy, like when you're doing a mediumship reading, is distinct. And it's like one of the first things that became very distinct to me is like mother, grandmother, great grandparent, like that's a specific line energy. And then like aunt, uncle is out here. And I don't even, like, I will say this, like my mediumship development instructor taught me to like plot them on a family tree and ask them to put themselves there. So like I find it very easy to distinguish those energies. Not everyone can, but I will say like I think aunt and mom are distinct. Um, Anyway, so that's like it's so weird, right? Like to like want to because like I don't know, like I again, like I feel like it's like trying to bottle the ocean. Like you can't do it, you know? Like you can't vacuum the bottom of the ocean. You can't pave a road through the ocean. You just got to let the ocean be the ocean and trust that your guys aren't going to let you drown. And I also like I have so much peace around my mom's passage because we've talked so much about like the death plans. Even just last week at Sunday dinner, mom and me and her spouse were talking about like um what happens if either of them predeceases the other. And like and I love that we can talk about these things. So I know very like I know exactly what my mom wants for her funeral. These are decisions that are already made and like I don't have to make them, you know, and like I just get to execute and I get to wear my cute dress, which I wouldn't have bought if I wasn't like, oh, I think this would be great for my mom's funeral. So I know I have it in my closet just in case. I also have a great like black dress for a funeral too, you know, for someone, but if this for an orange funeral, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, so because for a long time I was like, am I gonna wear my mom's old orange sweatshirt that she gave me to her funeral? But now I have a nice dress. So and I get to wear it for my mom in front of my mom, and she'll get to appreciate it. And then at some point when she passes, which might not be for 20 more years, who knows, right? Like her lessons could keep learning those lessons and keep buying more time. But my mom's slippery like that. That's what they said in that follow-up with Christy, and I thought that was funny. So anyway, I hope this helps. I don't know if this helps you, but the timelines are bonkers. It's really hard to predict anything. So much of like what is coming for me hinges on other people learning their lessons and they're taking their sweet time. So like I feel like I've been in kind of a waiting game. And now for like the energy coming through for me for 2026, like I'm in I don't know. Like I've really like have a real hard time with manifestation stuff because like again, I feel like I've built this life multiple times and then things fall apart. So I'm kind of like afraid in some ways to like try because I'm like, if I try, it's gonna fail. But I gotta learn from the failures. There's always good that's coming from like the trying, right? The mistake energy can teach us the lessons. It's also like good for people to see me fail and keep getting back up. I think that's true. And also, I'm starting to be able to read energy in the way where, like, I like this summer when I decided to teach my aerobics class in Los Angeles, which I was not sure if I was even going to go to LA. Once I made that decision, I could feel the energetic ripples of making that decision. It was very interesting. It wasn't even like me having to go, it was the decision to go. So now I'm working more on like, okay, so what is mine to boldly do, and how can I surrender to the divine timing? Because divine timing never fails, and we all serve this like great mystery that is so incredible. And we're like not only the main character in our own story, we're also the, background spear carrier in a larger play that's going on. Um, so anyway, I'm just out here carrying my spear like a good Capricorn, doing the thing, and trying to be softer. These are the words that are coming out from. I've been doing some timeline meditation work towards like where I want to be and who like, and so like if you go to where you want to be, who do you need to be that, right? Like it's kind of like the labyrinth, like what do you need to learn? This is like kind of a different way to go. And so I'm like that higher self that came through. This was just recently at the Gemini full moon. I did this meditation. She requires softness. So I'm softening even more, which like tender heart, bigger life, better quality of life with more relationships, audacity and tenacity. So what audacious things will I do in 2026? I don't know yet, but we're in a real planning period. In the Celtic Wheel of the Year, the new year is Samhain, which is the October 31st, November 1st timeline. This is a season of Samhain, and this is when you kind of just start thinking about what you want in the coming year. And then at Yule, which is around the winter solstice, December 21st, that's where we have like this. I call them the days of awe. I don't know where I picked that up, but it's like kind of this time where like spirit is really landing stuff for you. Like your ancestors have a lot of access to you. And so in that time, I'll really be in some deep meditation. I did this last year. I'm going to do this again this year. And it's my birthday, which is Christmas Eve, by the way. My Amazon wish list is below. And if you don't want to buy stuff on Amazon, I don't blame you. You can send me gift cards to libro.fm so I can get smarter and listen to more audiobooks. I'm trying to reduce my screen time. So I'm going to listen to more audiobooks and knit. I'm going to start knitting again. So anyway, in that time, I'm going to be meditating a lot and like figuring out what seeds want to be planted in the coming year. And anyway, so I hope you all are doing quite well and considering considering. And I just love you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting all of my things. Thanks for liking and following and sharing with a friend. And please subscribe to my Patreon page, even for free, just to, get my messages and my updates. And I promise I try to add value as much as possible. From my heart to yours, we're all doing the best we can with the tools and resources we have at the time. And you can send me questions, fatkiddanceparty@gmail.com. Okay, I love you. Bye.